So if you're here, one or more of these three things is true. You're more of a sit back and pull the strings type. You have an intimate fetish for cyan, and or you're all about sharing the love. My name is Benji, and this is the guide to the leadership aspect. The focus over the next few minutes will largely remain on the different archetypes and staples that are contained therein, giving you a more in-depth impression of what the aspect has to offer and what sort of playstyles you can expect to be able to adopt. Before we proceed, however, please do take a moment to subscribe to the channel to keep well inside our glorious little bubble. And don't forget to give that like button a touchy-feely too, if of course you found yourself entertained. So it really would be foolish of me to start with anything other than the recursion based decks that became popular very early in the game's existence. The plan is to get at least double whammy from potent enter the battlefield actions wherever you can get a hold of them. Ally wise then, you've got two categories here. Generally expensive cards that are good when they hit the table and when they're turning sideways, like Captain Marvel, Falcon and Nick Fury, and then the usually cheaper cards that are all in on the enters play effect, like White Tiger, Kalu and Maria Hill. You can of course mix and match these, but be sure that your identity can muster the economy to pay for that top line. Of course these cards are all pretty and everything, but without make the call, rapid response and regroup, they're like boats without water. What we have here is variations on a theme. Make the call is going to be best used targeting the lower cost allies to get cheaper recursive value out of their abilities, but the beauty is if you need to bring a body back, you can take your pick. Rapid response is where you're aiming to hit the jackpot with higher costed allies, the value inherently going up the more you spent on your cardboard friend initially. And then there's regroup, the poor man's make the call in solo play, a card that comes alive in multiplayer and minion heavy scenarios. Put it this way, the more allies you can throw under the bus for you and your pals on a turn, the more this pays itself back. And the combo with 2 health allies and rapid response is like a raise the dead special. Then comes the archetype for those that just want to turn cards sideways. Call it burn, call it rush, call it whatever you want. The theme remains the same. Play minions, exhaust them, ready them and rinse and repeat as much as you can. Let's start this time with the enabling cards. You've got the good in every deck get ready and command team, and then the situationally synergistic inspiring presence and sky cycle. Once again you have your different ways to cook an egg, with get ready providing the best value but requiring you to have it at the right time. Command team taxes the wallet a bit more but gives you a guaranteed readying session over the course of 3 turns. Inspiring presence is viable for quite a few heroes with the Avenger trait, and if you find yourself with not enough ready enablers, then this is worth a punt. The same can be said for Sky Cycle, although it's fair to say that these are better value on the real high-end allies you might bring. Speaking of which, the general plan here should be to pick allies that are impactful when they swing their thing, but not too overcosted so as to hinder efficient use of your economy. Every impactful turn should leave nothing left in reserve. As such, my favourites in this type of deck are Hawkeye Kate, Power Man and Spider-Man Miles. The former allows you to use the discard outlet in swing 1 and then that juicy run-of-the-mill 2 damage in swing 2. Power Man can thwack for 8 damage and then run back to your discard pile, and Spider-Man does the very well same thing. Then you've got your situational and tech cards like Gamora, Black Knight and of course the ever grey Nick Fury. Gamora will absolutely serve you well most of the time and all the time in event heavy decks. Black Knight will of course be scenario dependently awesome, and Nick Fury gets you one step closer to maximising his potential. Yes sir, please. The idea being with most of these disposable assets is that they're sitting on 1 health at the end of your turn, ready to chump defend if need be. But there's an even more aggressive subset of this archetype, that sees you getting one last hurrah out of your trusted ally. That's where Go Down Swinging, Last Stand and Save the Day slide into focus. Yes, you might have wished you went high end with your ally pool with column A, but an average of 3 damage should not be sniffed at, which is exactly what you're getting with Last Stand. And Save the Day is there for just that time when you're flying that little bit close to the sun. We then segue from the mid-range to the high end with your Beefcake buddy builds. They go full upgrade on your bestest frenzies. Iron Man, Ronin and Giant Man are the obvious candidates to stack upgrades on and let them go buck wild. Tin Geezer goes from below average stat line wise for his cost to above average with just one upgrade that'll discount most likely to a freebie. Ronin gets the same type of bump from the first upgrade, and Giant Man is just begging to have his hit points buffed and healed so he can keep on a wrecking. But because 3 allies probably ain't going to cut it to get the game plan rolling, we'd also consider Beta Ray Bill, Drax and Captain America as viable candidates. The former because 3 attacks and 4 hit points is a wonderful platform for sustained damage. Drax is value personified subject to you bringing a Guardian identity, and it's a similar story with Captain America, so long as you don't pay more than 4 for him. The common denominator here is either above average attack values and or above average starting hit points, so you can do the big things many more times than you usually would with every ally that hits the table. But because basic stat lines are for losers, we want to go big on our BFFs, and so in that spirit we have Inspired, Sidearm and Laser Blaster for your damage dealing needs. Inspired is your consistent all-star of course, but Sidearm is a really good card in this type of deck, and a great card when you can get real benefit from ranged attacks. And Laser Blaster is inherently better with more minions on board, and it has his Guardian requirements, but there's also some secondary synergies with it being a weapon that's worth considering. So that's how we make our allies more potent, but it can be just as beneficial to keep them in the race that bit longer, and that's where cards like Reinforced Suit, Innovation and First Aid come into play. With the former providing phenomenal value on the sorts of allies we're bringing here, Innovation being a no-brainer to take its place in your suite of resource cards, and First Aid provides that very niche of benefits in this type of build. Before we close out this part of the show though, there are some tribal cards to consider in United We Stand, Guardians of the Galaxy and Inspiring Presence. On your left you have a card that scales in the winning direction on expert difficulty. In the middle we have a very specific set of requirements, but a card with a specific set of skills. And exiting stage right is an all-star in the right deck. We then have the Swarm decks, where it's all about getting bodies on board, pumping them full of steroids and setting them loose. Here we have a low resource curve and the means to increase the threshold of allies. The cornerstone of this type of build are the Triskelion, Lead from the Front and Strength in Numbers. Because A, we're all about having quantity over quality, B, the more targets Anthem effects like Lead from the Front have, the better the payout becomes, and C, cycling cards is a very powerful means to enable this type of strategy. So drawing 3 or 4 cards with Strength in Numbers is sweet synergy. And well, the bodies do look a bit different to most of the allies we talked about today. Kalu, Maria Hill and Stinger are your obvious choices, as there'll be none of this one ally per turn guff. If you're not sprogging out multiple buddies, you're not doing it right. Kalu's gonna give you that added benefit of fetching up a useful event, allowing you to refuel in the process. Maria Hill is the Don Daddy of economy and thwarting, and Stinger lets you flop out 5 allies if you're rocking a Triskelion as well. How can that be a bad thing? You've then got a second tier of choices in Ironheart, Ant-Man and Squirrel Girl. With the former doing everything Maria Hill does, just slightly worse, the middle being scalable to your needs which is pretty swish, and the latter only needs 1 minion on board to get that value trainer rolling. So we've covered there what you would call your 4 basic leadership archetypes, but more recent hero packs have seen an influx of tribal based cards, specifically those that benefit Avengers and Guardians. And so instead of going into too much detail about these individually, we'll just show you on screen some of the key cards for both tribes that you can mix and match into your decks dependent on what identities and allies you and your IRL friends might be bringing to the table. First up, we have your Avengers suite. The top row are some common enablers and the bottom is where you'll find your payoff. And then we have the same deal, this time wearing your Guardian pants. And there you have it, a fairly definitive take on the leadership aspect and its staple cards and archetypes. We very much hope you found what you came for. Are there any subtypes and rabbit holes we didn't delve into? Has this video helped to identify your favourite? Let me know in the comments. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.